Hello, this is Virtualis, the chess noob, learning and having fun with chess. Hello, so another 2 games, 2 wins, and this time both games against the same opponent. So 1 game of the Ponziani, and very interestingly, my opponent played a Ponziani setup with the black pieces as well. Let's see how they went. Let's firstly have a quick look at the review, and as you can see in this game, I did fairly well. Fairly short game, captured a lead in the beginning. All right, so moving on to the analysis. So the Ponziani, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and the Ponziani starts with c3. And just note sort of that structure there. So king's knight, king's pawn, and then the queen's pawn on the sort of c file up 1 square. And the way to sort of play against the Ponziani is just to take control of the center, which is what I did here. And one of the things for black is that they can't they have some difficulties here, because if they take, I take back with queen, and the queen here isn't immediately in trouble because white has blocked in their own knight. So captures, and now c4, which doesn't quite work. Now here I decide to play queen e4, or rather queen a5, so immediately, to give a check, block with bishop, and now here I chose to, immediately attack that knight. And this was a mistake. So you notice that, in these couple of games, my opponent, I think, plays to a particular sort of idea. So they have got a number of ideas. So firstly, they play a Ponziani setup, and next they try to castle kingside very early. And if you just play to a system without necessarily sort of keeping an eye on what's going on in the board, you can get into a lot of trouble. And you can see here, this was a fairly serious blunder, -7.5, and basically that bishop has nowhere. Has no one defending it really, because unless they want to lose their queen, that doesn't make sense. And that knight on the e file on the second rank, you'll see that this will work together very, very well with the queen in the next game as well. So obviously that comes with check. King is now forced to move, and here what I opted to do is potentially do thinking maybe a clearance sacrifice, but either way completely destabilize the defenses around the king. The opponent decides to move their rook rather than anything else. Here, bishop captures. I was going to, happy to sacrifice the bishop anyway. Captures. Now with check, king goes to the wrong spot, and now checkmate. So that knight guards those 2 squares, and the king has no one protecting it. So GG for the game 1. Let's now look at game 2. So game 2, as you can see, fairly similar pattern. I captured a lead in the beginning, which I was able to maintain, played fairly accurately here. Let's now move on to the analysis. There we are. And I had the white pieces, so my opponent wanted to have a rematch, which is cool. So e4, e5, I decided to play to Vienna, so knight c3. Very interesting. And if you remember the setup from before, so there's the c pawn. Now here, I've got an opportunity again to capture the full center. But in this game, I wanted to play more of a Vienna style, so I opted not to. So I played bishop c4. Opponent now develops the other knight, and there we go. So the knight, the pawn, so king's knight, king's pawn, c pawn up 1 square. Again, this is sort of like the reverse Ponziani with black. Again, I had an option to take the full center, but again, wanted to play King's Gambit, sort of a King's Gambit or a Vienna Gambit type style game. So captures, pawn forward, queen out, and just like in the sort of usual, block with queen. So now this is a problem for that knight. Knight jumps forward, and of course, with the c pawn there, it can actually do that. I opted to capture it anyway. Happy to damage my sort of opponent's pawn structure here, and also, capture, and that capture comes with an attack on the queen. So the opponent needs to do something. And like in the last game, I now have sort of an opportunity to really capture the full center. Opponent has very limited development. The queen in this position is not uncommon in sort of a Vienna game type setups. And here I've got the opportunity to firstly defend the knight with a pawn, and then once that's there, there's another pawn that can attack the queen, and that will be defended by the knight. So first move, c4 to defend the knight, a bishop move, now attack the queen, so really taking control of the full center. Keep on attacking, develop another minor piece, and of course another attack on the queen there. And again, this is sort of style of my opponent, doing an early castle kingside. And here I thought I have a potential attack. So because one of the things with the Vienna Gambit is you often end up clearing the f-file of your own pawn. So after short castles of my own, I've potentially got an attack down that f-file. So that's what I was thinking at this point. But first thing, take control of the center, that pawn defended by the knight, attacking the queen. My opponent now decides to play bishop h4 with check. And here I opt to do something cheeky. I thought, I could just straight up capture that hanging bishop. But I thought, look, I've got an opportunity here to firstly get rid of that pawn. I can clear out some of my pieces on this side, and then potentially I can have some very, very strong attack on the king side. So that's what I did. So g3, captures, expected to capture back, king out of the way. Now, these files are all open, facing the opponent's king. And of course, the queen here is still hanging. So curiously, they opted to sort of play that bishop move. So I thought, well, let's capture the queen. They take that rook, and I thought, that really doesn't matter. And again here, remember that first game? The knight to the e-file on the opponent's second rank with check, forcing the king into the corner, just like, that first game. And so there are some, themes here that I think my opponent is falling into, and so placing, I think, some of the king side defenses at risk. Now here, I actually missed a pattern, which I'll have to learn. So the best response here potentially for me is I could have taken. They would have been forced to take back, and then that would be checkmate. Again, the knight, taking control of those two squares, and the rook having done a clearance sacrifice, that would have been a very, very lovely checkmate. Now, I didn't see that in the actual game. So in the game, I ended up doing something. So firstly, lined up my pieces, pushed that pawn, but here I now can clear that with the bishop. That doesn't achieve very much. Attack, they capture, and here checkmate again with the knight taking over those two squares. So good game, GG. My big takeaway: the simplest and most direct response to a Ponziani opening type setup is to immediately take control of the center with your pawns. I hope you found this video interesting, and thanks for watching.